Welcome on in, football fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our top 3 stacks of the week for NFL DFS. Gonna go through some of the game environments that I think you should keep an eye on for some of your Draftkings lineups. These high upside matchups are 3 game environments that might lead us to ceiling performances, and thus for the largest of tournaments out there, might be the kind of spots that you might want to consider for your lineups. So a lot to get into, a lot of content I'm sure you're consuming here for week 1. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. So we've got our projections up here, and on here, just highlighted with our top 3 stacks. Of course, guys, I project every player in the field, but for the entire sheet, you'll have to check out my Patreon. What we're going to focus on here and what we have highlighted on the projections are going to be our top 3 stack players. So first up, we've got the Tua Tagovailoa going against who's high-powered offense of the Los Angeles Chargers. You got Herbert on the other side, also going to be an extremely popular option for stacks. Tua, pretty popular himself. They're just 4.8%. A lot of his wide receivers, like a Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, are up there in that 20, maybe even 15% range for Jalen Waddle there. Tyreek Hill is the one closer to 20, 25% owned. So the stacking options are maybe higher owned, but unlike a Justin Herbert, you get him at right around 4.8% ownership as opposed to 10, maybe 15% in some of the higher dollar contests for Justin Herbert. So I think if you want to look for a sneaky way, right, to get to one of the best game environments on the entire slate, it might be to take the Dolphins side, right, and run it back with a few players from the Chargers. So a few reasons why we've got some chalk here. First off, the game total, the highest of the entire slate. You also have 2 offenses that are extremely prone to getting into shootouts, right? 2 players at quarterback that are extremely efficient, capable of posting 35 to 40 points themselves. So at the quarterback position, at $6,700, $6,900, you know, it's real easy to get to these type of quarterbacks, right? Regardless of the matchup, let alone we have over a 50-point total and a relatively close spread at that. So if you're looking for stacking options, you know, they're really straightforward. You don't have to overthink it. At wide receiver and tight end, you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Jalen Waddle to pair up with a Tua. At tight end, Durham Smythe can give you a little bit of, I would say, salary relief, also some ownership leverage out there too. So maybe if you're just starting with a Tua, Tyreek Hill, and then looking to save some salary, maybe get a little bit different, right, than the Tua, Hill, Waddle start, maybe you just take the top 2 and use Smythe, right, as that third man in for that stack. You could even take Tua, Hill, and Waddle, and mix in a Durham Smythe as a third player there. I've seen crazier things take down GPPs before, so just something to consider there. Raheem Mostert, you could take it running back as well, but personally, I'd probably stick to Tyreek Hill, Waddle, and then maybe Smythe in a few lineups there too. In terms of buybacks, you have arguably just as many options, right? We've got Keenan Allen, $7,300. Maybe a little bit expensive, but that does give him a little bit of a lower ownership projection at just 9.6%. Of course, we've got guys like Williams out there, Mike Williams. Let's see, where is he at in terms of pricing? Pretty cheap at $5,700. That's why he's higher owned than a Keenan Allen, despite having that lower projection. And even a Quinn Johnston, right? If we go down here a little bit further, you'll get see we have him at $4,400. He's not going to play nearly as many snaps, but pretty much in DFS, right, these large field contests, we're just looking for somebody to spike, right? In Johnston, a player that's as athletic and as much of a down the field deep play threat as a Quinn Johnston can be, could go out there, break the slate with one given play. So there's a ton of stacking options to get to. There's a lot of buybacks that you could take there on the Chargers side. And, you know, a lot of people are going to start in lineups with the Justin Herbert, right? They're probably going to take like a Keenan Allen, maybe take a Gerald Everett, right? Another buyback option that you could take. But maybe they'll start with the Herbert as the stack, right? And then try and take a few Dolphins players, maybe Tyreek Hill as a buyback. First off, that's more expensive, right? Obviously, Herbert a little bit more expensive than Tua, although only a $200 difference, right? So let's not go crazy there. But when you're trying to stack up the Chargers, right, especially if you're going like Keenan Allen and a Mike Williams, that's a lot of salary to dish out, right? Especially if you want a Waddle or a Tyreek Hill as your spend up there for the buyback. So I prefer the Dolphins side because of some of the ownership there on Tua, but also because the stacks, like you can mix in a Durham Smythe, right? When you're using a Justin Herbert, you're taking a premium spend up option like a Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. You don't really want to buy it back with a Durham Smythe, right? Whereas if you start with the Tua stack, it makes a little bit more sense to go in that direction. So for me, that's how I'll be building my lineups. I think if you wanted to stack Justin Herbert, I very well may in some of my large field contests. You could obviously do so too, but just know that this is going to be a popular stack, right? Even if you get to Tua, you're trying to take him at just 4.8% ownership. A lot of the other spots you're getting to, right, like a Tyreek Hill, you're getting at inflated ownership numbers, right? 22.4% is extremely high for a wide receiver. So just bear that in mind, right? It's maybe not as good from the leverage perspective as some of the other stacks that we'll go through here, but still one that I'll definitely be getting exposure to just because I think the game environment, right, the game total, all kind of speaks for itself. When we take a look at our second stack, it's a little bit more contrarian, but not super low owned, right? If you want to look at the low owned one, the one that's a little bit more outside the box, we'll get to that with our last pick. But Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars are just priced way too low, right? It's a complete price inefficiency here and one that I'm looking to take advantage of. So with Trevor Lawrence, I think the price is pretty fair at $6,500, but it's more so the wide receivers that I think are just egregiously mispriced. So it starts up top, right? You've got Calvin Ridley, who's only $6,500. I think that is a glaring misprice there. But if we go down a little bit further, Christian Kirk, $5,600. You have Zay Jones down here that's also extremely affordable at $4,500. And while you'd think that they'd be chalky, look at this, Zay Jones, 3.8%. We go up here to Christian Kirk. Let's see, I've got him at 10.9%. So this is actually going to be the highest ownership number of anybody there in the Jaguars. And then if we go up to Calvin Ridley, who I thought, a lot of people have been talking about steaming up all offseason. I thought he'd be chalky here. Week 1 is only 7.6% owned. So I know he's higher owned than Lockett, who we'll talk about here with our next game stack. But I like the stacking options, right? You take a, Lawrence, who's 6.7% owned, right? That's, a little bit higher owned than average, right, at the quarterback position. So he's not a pivot in his own, but you got the Ridleys, the Kirks, the Zay Jones of the world that are all relatively low owned. You could go to tight end too, right? You go up here, take Evan Ingram, use him at tight end at just 6.6% ownership, and easily make stacks that have plenty of leverage, right? Unlike the Tyreek Hills, the Jalen Waddles, or even like the Keenan Allen, Mike Williams that are like 15, 25% owned, right? We're getting players at sub 10% ownership, right? So in large field GPPs, these lineups are a lot easier to put together. In fact, if they're chalk at running back that you like, which given some of the price differences, some of the glaring misprices at running back because of injuries that are opened up week 1, you might want to take some of that chalk, right? Getting a little bit more unique with your quarterback stack, like we have here with Lawrence, and like the last stack we'll talk about with the Seahawks, might be a way to go out there and do so. So at running back, you could take Travis Etienne, you could take Austin Eckler as a buyback to some of the Tua stacks they were talking about before. I'll just say that running back buybacks I'm okay with. Not really looking to take a lot of running backs actually with my stack, right? So if I'm stacking Tua, I don't know if I love taking a Mostert, right? If we're going out there and playing Lawrence, you could play an Etienne. It's just personally not my favorite kind of strategy. So I wanted to point that out. In terms of buyback options, I don't think you have to have a buyback here, but I would recommend it. With the Tua stack, you absolutely should have a buyback, right? I think that's the kind of game environment where you want exposure to both sides there. In this matchup against the Colts, I would prefer to have some kind of correlation that you're working with, especially if you're in a large field, the biggest of big GPPs out there. But I don't think you have to have a buyback, right? There's a difference there. So a few buybacks you could consider. First off, cheap running back, right? You could go down to the bottom and take Deion Jackson, right? $4,100. One of those relatively chalky running backs I think you could consider. Worth noting that Zach Moss hasn't officially been rolled out as of right now, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. If he does get rolled out, Deion Jackson is going to be clearly the number one back there for the Colts, and at just $4,100, right, $100 above the minimum, that's a huge value to be had. So you could take him, try and save some salary there. Of course, you got guys like Michael Pittman Jr. at $6,200. Outside of that, not a ton of buybacks that I like. So I'm probably going to mix in one of those two to a lot of lineups, right, especially if Zach Moss is out. But I don't know if I'm forcing them in, right, when it comes to our Jaguar stacks here. And our last stack of the week, number 3 out here, but certainly not least, is the Seahawks stack. And honestly, I think Geno Smith might win somebody a GPP this week. First off, the price tag at $6,100 is more than fair. In terms of points per dollar value, you're getting some of the best of anyone on the slate when it just comes to pure price efficiency. And then the stacking options are fantastic, right? And this is what I like here. Geno is 7% owned, right? So, unlike a Trevor Lawrence, right? He's kind of in that same vein, right? You're not getting a lot of leverage with the quarterback, but let's take a look at the different stacking options, right? DK Metcalf going way under owned, only 6.7% owned. That is just a flat out mistake, right, for somebody of his ceiling potential. You've got Tyler Lockett down here, right, who's way cheaper than he should be. We already passed him there. But yeah, Tyler Lockett, right, $6,700, 4.7% owned, right, sub 5% owned. Still projects for over 2x points per dollar. You can go down here to Jackson Smith-Njigba, right, the rookie, right, he's only $4,900. Use him as a stacking option. You could go to tight end, right? Definitely options here that we could consider. Who is it? Let's find him. Noah Fant, right, would be the number 1 tight end. You could also go down here and take Will Dissly, right, their number 2 tight end that they feature quite prominently in their offense. All of these players are low owned, 0.7%. 3.3% for Noah Fant, right? Jackson Smith-Njigba is only 1% owned. All of the stacking options are very much so pivots, right? And I think that eventually people are going to catch on to that, and they might start to get a little bit more steam here on Saturday and Sunday because of that. But as of right now, like the Seahawks stack looks incredible, and kind of like Trevor Lawrence, I don't think you have to force in a buyback. If you're going to, if you think it's going to be a higher paced game, maybe you do take a Cam Akers, right, assuming that he does some of the red zone damage out there for the Rams. You could go to wide receiver and take a Van Jefferson, right? He's a little bit cheaper than he should be because of the way pricing came out at only $4,700. You could take Tyler Higbee at tight end. What's he cost? I mean, he's got to be pretty cheap out there. There at $4,800, only 6.4% owned. There are stacking options. There are buyback options. But yeah, I don't know if I'd force them in. So there'll be lineups I have with correlation between the two teams, and then there'll just be stacks where I'm going out there and trying to hammer home those Seahawks players. If Geno gets there, if Trevor Lawrence is going to get to a true 25 to 30 plus point performance, they're going to throw 2, probably 3 touchdowns, and to have at least 1-2 wide receivers that come along with them. So in large field contests, these are the kind of game environments that I'm prioritizing because they have ceiling potential, right? They have shootout potential out there, and if you're going to try and win one of the large field GPPs, that is what it's going to take. That is all I've got for the top stacks of the week. Before we hop on out of here, first off, let me know your top stack of the week. And also, go ahead and smash that like button for me. We're doing content throughout the week, both for showdowns and for main slates. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of that when it drops. But our next piece of content will be a live stream tomorrow evening, going over any of the last second news that you need for Sunday. So we'll be talking through some of our top game stacks, right? Whether any of that has changed. Of course, a lot of ownership talk, all of your questions down in live chat, any prop analysis that you're looking at, just getting you ready out there for the Sunday's action. So looking forward to it. Keep an eye out for my Sunday night football preview as well. And let's go out there and have ourselves a day. Until next time, best of luck out there in those GPPs, and I hope to see a lot of your names at the top of some of those contests.